Okie doke. Our next speaker is Galen Mancino. He's going to get his slides. And Galen was nice enough to help me out and be a project manager for some of the projects that I had put together for this. And we were meeting last week. I was telling him about stuff. And as he was getting ready and we were leaving, I'm just like, oh, so what's your pet project right now? It's like the coolest thing you're working on, you know? And he talked about this. And so I did my thing where I'm like, oh, that's it. You got to go on stage this weekend. This is too interesting. And the financial piece of this puzzle in terms of how every system, every institution that we have that's sort of taking advantage of us in every possible way. And we can't get loans to buy houses, and we can't do things unless you're kind of already coming from money, already having a lot to begin with, and there's no way to level the playing field. So when I hear somebody with an idea that sounds like they could level the playing field, I get all excited, and that's what he's going to tell you about now. Okay? Thank you very much. Yeah, Galen Mancino. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. It is awesome to be here. I'm just going to raise this a little bit. Maybe that'll do. There we go. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah, it's good. That's good. Sorry. Here we go. Yeah. Okay, cool. Just a quick preface to this. This is an idea that does not exist in any substantiated form. It's in my head. It's in a bunch of documentation, and it's a project that I feel so strongly about that I'm now trying to build my life around so that I can make it happen. So I'm really interested in your feedback and your thoughts. Please talk to me afterwards. If you ever heard of gentrification, please raise your hand. Most people have heard of gentrification. What is it? Let's think of it in terms of cause and effect. Cause, property values go up. There are a variety of reasons why that happens. You know, nice new businesses in your neighborhoods, a new appraisal, whatever, a new school. And the effect is the cost of buying or renting those properties also goes up. Now, if you own one of those properties, chances are that's great news, because now you have a higher value equity. If you're a tenant in one of those properties, it's probably bad news. And I say probably because, you know, if I get a new cafe in my neighborhood, I'm not going to complain outright because it's, hey, there it is, it's cool, it's nice, but it's going to affect me. So gentrification is complicated. Just to kind of take as an example, my neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood of Oakland that has a few restaurants, several liquor stores, and one cafe. Honestly, I would love to have another cafe, another restaurant, a couple new shops. I really like living somewhere with a lot going on. But there is the problem. I don't want higher rent, and I don't want a higher likelihood of eviction. I do want these new restaurants. I do want these shops. I want local commerce. It's healthy. I do not own anything in my neighborhood. And that is the biggest symptom of gentrification is you get kicked out because you don't own where you live. So who does? We're talking about three main parties. These are the parties that own housing developments and the businesses, either outright or in part. And these are banks, private individuals, and firms. And firms would include development firms as well. And even though those parties have offices in my city, I really don't have any influence over them. They don't really care what I think. I'm just one guy. Now let's talk about banks for a second. Let's say Wells Fargo owns a piece of a housing development in my area, which they do in some way. Banks finance housing developments all the time. What I mean is they finance construction projects. They effectively own pieces of construction of houses. Even if I have a savings account with Wells Fargo, I still don't have any influence on where they invest in my neighborhood and how. I mean, even if I had, in theory, $1 million in my neighborhood, I would be better off just investing that $1 million as an individual than I would trying to convince the bank, hey, you should use some of my money for this project. They don't care. They might choose to finance market rate housing instead of affordable housing because there might be a better return. And everyone in Oakland knows we need more affordable housing. So here's the problem. In theory, everybody wants economic growth because it means safer neighborhoods, more amenities, more jobs. But when you don't own a piece of that growth, you can easily become a victim of it, of higher prices, higher rent, eviction, or just decreased representation in your local economy. You know, even if you're living comfortably where you're not worried you're going to get evicted, maybe the businesses that start popping up in your neighborhood aren't really ones you want or ones you see as contributing to the good of the community. Add on to this that banks want my money, they want all of our money so they can invest it and make more of it. But they don't care about what I think would be a good investment. They really don't care about what most people think would be a good investment. They're their own customers. They don't care. I may not have financial expertise, but as a resident, I have a kind of local expertise. I don't have millions of dollars lying around, but I know there are hundreds of people in my area who also, by the way, bank with Wells Fargo and also want to have a say in what gets invested in their neighborhoods. So here is one attempt at this solution. We've seen crowdsourcing platforms succeed wildly, like Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Indiegogo. We know that when you come up with a good idea, people will contribute to it. Even at levels of $10 per person, when you have 1,000 backers, those small amounts add up quickly. We've also seen the rise of disruptive stock trading platforms like Robinhood and Stash, where for the first time, you can just buy and sell stock easily with no fees from your phone. This is not how our grandparents bought stock. Now it's much easier. Now I know what you're thinking. Why not combine the two? Why not just make that the solution and be done with it? Not quite. 1929. Who knows what happened in 1929? Great Depression, yes. The stock market crashed, and famed American economist John Galbraith's postmortem on that crash, he points to speculation in Floridian real estate as the straw that broke the camel's back. People were essentially buying worthless swampland sight unseen. Why is this relevant for my talk, you may be asking? I don't bring it up because the investors lost their money, which they did all over the country. I bring it up because people who were actually living in Florida, the farmers and the regular people, were the victims of an economic collapse they had no power to stop. They had no one to hold accountable but the market that let it happen. It happened again in 2008, by the way. The laws we passed to regulate the market are all pretty much getting repealed by this Congress. On a totally different note, who's ever heard of couch surfing? It's great, right? Not always. What's unique about couch surfing is that in order to sign up, they send you a real, non-digital postcard with a code that you have to enter to verify your physical address. So that gave me an idea. Why not create a stock market only for the people who live there? Using digital map technologies, we basically limit who can participate based on where they live. Why not create an app for the people of Oakland that lets them buy and sell stocks of local enterprises? Why not enable them to create something like Facebook groups of investors who say, we will only invest in your enterprise if you support worker ownership of your employees, or source at least 50% of your supplies locally, or offer internships to local students. And then imagine this. To sign up for the app, you link your bank account or your cryptocurrency, blockchain, or whatever. And I'm entering the routing number for Wells Fargo. Oops. And when I, sorry, I just lost my place. So I'm entering the routing number for my Wells Fargo account, and when I buy 5 shares of the new grocery store down the street, the app automatically pings my bank, requesting it to match my investment. So now the whole city of Oakland can see how much Wells Fargo is and isn't investing in what people really want, Crowdsourcing is a great way to show democracy in work, easily quantified. The app also shows you other banks. So maybe there's a local credit union with slightly higher mortgage rates, not as preferable, but has invested heavily in the local economy and wants to steal your business from Wells Fargo. So what about the stocks themselves? What are they? It could be common stock that people trade to make money off of the same way they do on Wall Street. It could be a stock with a dividend that essentially distributes profits locally. It could be various types of securities. The point is, at the most basic level, each share represents influence. You are a shareholder, you have a say. This is something that doesn't really exist on Wall Street unless you have thousands, if not millions, of shares. Returning to the problem of gentrification. If I can buy shares in the new housing development a few blocks over, when that development increases neighboring property values, I have a quarterly dividend. I have real cash to help me offset my increased rent. I own something, and my investment is paying a return. This is about leveling the playing field for local businesses also. This idea of creating a local-only stock market, creating the app, tracking the banks, it gives local businesses direct access to capital in a style of crowdsourcing. These local businesses, by the way, are also the most accountable because they're physically there. You can just go to them and complain. They can't avoid you. But the app would make it stupidly easy for business owners by offering ready-made miniature IPOs, so the businesses don't have to worry about paying extra legal and accounting fees. It's kind of like a legal Zoom, but for issuing stock. So you're probably wondering, how does this play out beyond the city limits? What effect would it have on other markets, right? No city is an island. Right now, when it comes to businesses getting capital, they're all competing on a market where the de facto rules are dictated by the largest players and the revolving door between industry and government. Not only is it legal, but it's supposedly good for the market when firms like Bain Capital take over mid-sized businesses, liquidate assets, and lay off all the workers. Actions like that are justified because they increase stock prices and create more capital to do it all over again, continuing to consolidate into bigger corporate conglomerates. We tolerate it because we're frankly removed from the consequences, and because the stock market is supposed to be a way to democratize capital, to enable anyone to get rich on their own earnings. To me and anyone else, the status quo is unsustainable and contributes to radical wealth inequality. There have been a bunch of recent articles about Amazon's new headquarters, how it would generate jobs and bring in new revenue. The prospect of that has made us all compete against each other, city versus city, into a race to the bottom. End rant. I bring all this up because this, Wall Street, should look like this. I mean, what have we been talking about for the last 3 hours? Decentralized internet. We all know the benefits of that. Just think about how this could take place on an economic level and how the biggest players do not have the same leverage they do when each economy is networked with other economies. I believe the way forward is to use technology to create a web of networked economies with a standard wave exchange that might echo something like the standard internet protocols we use for web traffic. And some people, like my friend Mech over here, have proposed using computer algorithms to write laws. If we could use similar algorithms to create trade agreements between cities, we could end up with comprehensive and fair commercial agreements between cities and towns. My final note is this. The word equity can have two meanings. On the one hand, it can mean something like a stock, a bond, a financial instrument, very literal. On the other, it can mean making things not just equal, but making them fair. Maybe equity can be equitable. Thank you.